Para cerrar la jornada y el programa del Congreso nos vamos al transporte, pero esta vez visto desde el punto de vista de la movilidad de las personas y donde la tecnología vuelve a ser la llave de la inclusión. La moderadora de la mesa es Patricia Otero, que actualmente ocupa el cargo de directora de Ilunion Accesibilidad, empresa del grupo Ilunion, líder en materia de consultoría en accesibilidad universal. Patricia lleva más de 20 años liderando diferentes proyectos dentro del grupo Ilunion y concretamente en el sector turístico como directiva de Ilunion Hotels. Bienvenida, Patricia. Patricia, aquí estamos esperándote.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to present this panel. My name is Patricia Otero. I'm the director of Ilunion Accesibilidad. We have 4 guests here, 4 very important people in this field. And we're going to talk about the new scenario of mobility and new technologies for inclusion. So thanks, Álvaro, María, José, Victor, and José Luis. Thanks to all of you for being with us today. Now, mobility is one of the great present and future challenges for us. But we have to understand this not only as in a concept of moving through the city, it should also be understood as a tool at the service of all citizens, a tool that allows us to experience things and to take advantage of services. Now, the focus mobility on people brings us to this inclusion that we're all looking for. When we talk about citizens, we're talking about all people without any distinctions whatsoever. Now, with this approach, this human approach of mobility, technology is a great ally. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Álvaro Urech. Álvaro is responsible for innovation at Alstom. He's has a PhD in physics and works in management in different fields of technology like aeronautics, engineering, transport, and innovation. Álvaro now is the Director of Innovation at Alstom for Spain and Portugal and coordinates these functions with innovation activities. For Alstom, it's very important that each passenger, regardless of their circumstances, can have a good experience in their travels. And we'll see what kind of work is done in this field on a daily basis. So, Álvaro, you have the floor. Thanks very much, Patricia, for that. First, thanks for the presentation and for the invitation. For us, it's a great opportunity to be here and participating in this event. It's very important for us. We collaborate with the Onte Foundation. We have been collaborating with them for a long time now, and we're very, very happy. You're teaching us quite a bit. So we want to take advantage and share everything that we're doing here as well. We're going to, if you could put on my presentation, I'll talk from the slides. In my presentation, I'm going to talk about inclusive mobility. That's the term that we are using in Alstom, which Patricia was explaining. So all passengers, all travelers have the opportunity to have a good experience that meets their needs and their circumstances. Just a few words about Alstom, just in case you don't know our company. We're the biggest manufacturer right now of mobility solutions, collective mobility solutions, mostly trains. In Europe, we're number 2 in the world, 14 billion in revenues, 70,000 employees. So trains are growing now. So we're on the right path, and there we are. We think that these ideas of inclusive mobility are very present in all of the rail projects that we develop. We work in the train cars, high-speed train cars, trams and so forth, and everything in between, and all the systems, aids for the passengers, information and so forth, and what we call also services like maintenance, any additional services that we can add to our equipment once it's delivered. Now, for us, and from my point of view as responsible for innovation, we innovation and sustainability need to go hand in hand. Sustainability from all points of view, not just environmental system, social and economic sustainability as well. And as you can see, the relationship that we have between the different areas of sustainability and the areas of innovation is very direct. So we talk about social innovation, and we have inclusive mobility, mobility for everyone, smart mobility, economic mobility has to make sense, has to be feasible. In here, we talk about efficiency, digitization, and so forth, and then green mobility related with the environment. And here we're working on things like clean air, universal design, automation, green traction, eco design, all of these things that we're focusing on. In this case, in today's discussion, we're focusing on healthier mobility and more inclusive mobility as one of our priority areas. Some time ago, we were talking about intelligent or smart mobility and sustainable mobility from an environmental point of view. And now we've added in the recent years, this is for all passengers, the social part, the inclusive part of our work. As Patricia said at the beginning, for us, this change of paradigm is important. In other words, putting the passenger at the center. We used to talk about transport, but this is focused on the system, on the vehicle. But now we focus on the passenger. Passengers are the ones that move, the ones that have needs, the ones that have different ways of operating. So the design from the very beginning has to bear in mind the passengers. Well, that's how it always was, wasn't it? Well, not really. Of course, the passenger was always there, but the way that you think from the point of view of the passenger, so any type of passenger, and all the related needs of passengers is basic when we design our products and services. Now, the design for everyone, universal design, these are the things that we're incorporating in the way we work, because at the end of the day, we all have a certain types of disabilities at certain points in our lives. When it comes to mobility, it could be temporary. Maybe you have a broken leg or something. Or it could be situational. You're not able to, for example, not understanding the language. So you don't know, can't read the signs, for example, you're in another country and people talk about disabilities, but we're always find ourselves in situations where we have deficits. Some people more, some people less. Obviously, there's some people have permanent disabilities. So what we have to do is design for everyone so that everyone can have the capacity to take that trip without having to do strange things, so that they can just travel just like anyone else. Now, some examples, just very quickly, some of the things that we're doing. Accessibility, we're working a lot on the two level trains, 2 floors. They have advantages, but difficulties for mobility. So we're including, and this is working in some countries already, in elevators on trains, so the person in a wheelchair can go in, it can go up or down to the top level or the bottom level of the train perfectly well on a platform. Platform accesses, and in Madrid, in collaboration with Avilens. Some of you are probably familiar with that, to provide information for passengers for people who have a visual disability with their screens, with their phones, with the codes. They can have access to all of that information on their smartphone. And some important projects for us right now, and in both cases we've worked with the ONCE Foundation, and we are developing right now in Spain two important projects, and where these aspects of inclusion and accessibility were absolutely vital and really made a difference for us to have been awarded these projects. In Barcelona, we have visual indications, automatic uh, cameras that detect wheelchairs and know if the space reserved for a wheelchair is taken or not. All of these types of things are integrated now directly in the way that we work. And the other big project that we were awarded here in Spain, there were several, but the biggest one was the new commuter trains, high capacity trains with two floors, excessive doors on the platforms, such that during the course of the trip, people with different characteristics can find the best way to enjoy the trip. So that's it. I wanted to be short. I hope that I didn't go on too long. But as Patricia said at the beginning, I just wanted to insist that for us, this collaboration that we have with the ONCE Foundation, this way of seeing things, what they've taught us is how to look at things differently. Because sometimes we don't realize, and we are learning a lot. In this collaboration, what we're learning is to look and listen and understand and see that there are things that we thought we were doing correct, but we weren't taking everyone into consideration. So for me, working in these projects with them, these two projects especially, has been a fantastic experience. So I'm very appreciative. I'll stop there now. I hope this was interesting for you, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thanks very much. Thank you, Álvaro, for that. You talked about inclusion, accessibility, and including everyone in these projects and this design for everyone. So it's fantastic to see how big corporations offer and design these types of accessible uh, elements and make them inclusive for everyone. Thanks. Now, Maria Jose Aparicio, she's the Deputy Director General of Training and Road Safety Education from the Traffic Department in Spain. She has studied law, and belongs to the special school to work on uh, traffic and traffic regulations. She works in driver training and works on safe transport. She's worked professionally in the Director General of Automobile Mobility, and she's going to show us, and she's going to show us the situation of mobility and the challenges it's facing, and the projects being carried out in accessibility at the Directorate General for Automobile Mobility. Thanks very much. So again, thanks very much for having invited us, and thanks to the ONCE Foundation. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. And we've initiated just very recently. We should have started this work probably much sooner, but we are working intensely now on accessibility, collaborating with the ONCE. And for me, It's a pleasure to be here. As you said, I would like to first start by talking about mobility and the big challenges we are facing in mobility. When we talk about problems and challenges of current mobility, we have to focus mainly on cities because today 55% of the world population is living in urban centers, and this is growing. This percentage is growing, and all the work that we're doing is focused mostly on mobility in cities. We're working this picture you see here, where you see organized, clean city, no parking problems. This is what we aspire towards, but the reality is quite different. This is the challenge that we're facing, and cities are becoming very complicated areas for mobility, mainly due to different changes cities are undergoing. So, and there's also a high rate of accidents in cities. These are some data from 2020, a strange year, really, but these are percentages that are repeated today of deaths on roads. 80% are what we call vulnerable people who are not protected by the body of a car, by cyclists, pedestrians, and so forth. Now, this is a group that we call vulnerable, but really, they're not essentially vulnerable. They're not vulnerable when they get up in the morning, but it's the circumstances of the city because of the traffic that makes these people vulnerable. So that's the first challenge. If we want to, when we think about future mobility, it has to be safe. We have to focus all of our policies on protecting vulnerable people. And there are different grades of vulnerability. So we have a pedestrian, a middle-aged pedestrian with all of his or her capacities. And it's not the same as a small child, as an elderly person, or with a blind person. And also, we're seeing in the cities, we have a problem of a lack of social harmony. The use of the sidewalks, for example, the use of bicycles, the lack of bike lanes. And this makes it difficult, not only difficult for a wheelchair, but it also makes it difficult for just about anyone to move. Bike lanes are being built, but are being invaded by cars. So we have to create these spaces, but we have to teach and raise awareness of people that we need to respect these areas. And lastly, those that work on mobility, we're always talking about the 3 S's. It has to be safe, it has to be sustainable. And that's true, but it has to first be accessible. Accessibility is not something that requires huge investment. Or accessibility is simply saying that all citizens, irrespective of their condition, should be able to move within the urban setting under equal conditions. When we're talking about accessibility, often we think about that 10% of people who have a disability. But accessibility also means the elderly, for example. In our population now, 19.5% of people are over age 65. So this aging population in our country, in Spain, where we have it really affects a huge percentage of the population. And then we also have any of us can have a specific need at any point in our life. So we have to work to guarantee this accessibility for everyone. Now, after looking at these three big challenges in terms of the protection of vulnerable people, accessibility, and so forth, here the DG for traffic is trying to improve accessibility because having a driver's license for many people is the only way that they can move and this is what we need to guarantee. So we have a lot of technological development systems to help drivers, medical advances that allow us to move forward with this. Here, what we do, we're the ones who who test drivers and award driving license. So each driver has to have the necessary skills and capacities to be able to be given a driving license. So we have to work on improving the services that we provide so people with disabilities or specific needs can also get a driving license. This is all regulated in a regulation with the minimum things that we need to be able to drive. This standard has to, like I said before, a lot of advances have been made. So this standard it does have to change. For example, access to become a truck driver, for example, used to be limited so that a person with motor disabilities could not drive a truck. But now, after prior analysis and medical reports and medical examinations and so forth, they can. We're also opening things up to group two for other people with other disabilities. So we are protecting safety, but at the same time, we're adapting all our regulations to provide access to certain groups that used to not be able to get certain driving license. In terms of knowledge, we'd give people with different difficulties more time to do the driving examination, the theoretical part of the examination. For example, we have a whole manual that's has been translated into sign language so that people can study all of the things they need to know to pass their driving exam. We also, on our web page, we have videos that explain in sign language how the examination works, but that's not enough. We're working to adapt all of our questions, 16,000 questions that we have on our exams, our theoretical exams for your driving license. We have things that be very useful people with intellectual disabilities, and not only for them, but there are also other groups that have learning difficulties or challenges that can really benefit from this different information that we're providing. Now, if we focus on the actual driving test, well, we have a little bit of a debt to pay with people with disabilities. We have on the web page, we have a specific section with information, the possibility of through the ONTE will now allow vehicles will be able to drive on the roads that are special vehicles approved by the associations like the ONTE Foundation. So for people with dyslexia, people with disabilities, etc. And we have our project. I'm finishing up because I can see that I'm running out of time. We want to take advantage of the technological advances being made to create specific centers to assess people with disabilities to give them greater security and safety when they adapt their vehicles to their disability. Today, this is just done with a medical report And these are very expensive adaptations, and we're working in collaboration with the Inserso organization to provide simulators and so forth to provide security for adaptation of vehicles. And that's it. I wanted to finish in time, and I could be talking about this for hours, but thanks very much. And I'll answer your questions.
Fenomenal, María José. Pues gracias. La verdad que ojalá podamos disfrutar de esas ciudades del futuro limpias, organizadas, de disfrutar de esa movilidad del futuro. Qué importante es que ya estamos poniendo en marcha mucho trabajo y qué importante es ver que la tecnología sí que nos ayuda, ¿no?, a avanzar más rápido. Y gracias también por tener en cuenta esa formación e información para las personas con algún tipo de discapacidad.
Thank you for taking into account information for people with disabilities who want to access having a driver's license, and we must provide them with the means to get it. And now is the turn for Victor Calzadilla, who works for the Ministry of Industry and Tourism. He is an industrial engineer by University Carlos III. He began his career in the energy sector, working in several tasks related to energy management. He is a state engineer. He works in the General Secretary of the Ministry of Industry. He's going to briefly introduce, because this is a very big scope regarding the new requisites for the installation of acoustic alarm systems. Thank you, Patricia. I wanted to thank the ONCE Foundation for inviting me on behalf of the Ministry of Industry to participate in this forum. I think this type of meetings where there are companies, administrations, and foundations are wonderful in order to move forward into a path that is going to, a journey that is going to be long. There's a long way ahead of us to improve, to achieve real inclusion for everyone during all stages of their life. Having said that, I would like to talk about the more practical issues regarding the design of the vehicles so that they're accessible for all. From the side of traffic management and from industry regarding the requirements to increase safety in the vehicles, especially we provide certification for wheel vehicles, no trains or no planes, only vehicles with wheels. During the design phase of a vehicle, a producer needs to take several things into account: design, industrial property, autonomy, that seem to be solved, but given the apparition of new technologies are becoming again a challenge for producers, for manufacturers. Usability, so that they're accessible for all users and attractive to consumers. There's something we tend to forget. Can it be sold? Does it comply with standardized requirements? The manufacturers are concerned with their vehicles being accessible and safe, but there are minimal requirements that are considered in the legislation, so that even the cheapest vehicle fulfills those requirements. These requirements are considered necessary to provide traffic safety. There are 3 levels where these requirements are collected within the United Nations, European Union, and Spanish legislation. Local legislation will include both Europe and Spain. For the last few years, most of our legislation comes from Europe. As we belong to the European Union, we are part of the drafting of this legislation as well. I wanted to explain the concept of certification that often is not very clear. Certification has to comply with certain requirements that are both regarded to safety and environmental issues. This is a certification by a public administration that the prototype of a product complies with the standardized technical requirements. The fact that this public administration exists is the reminder of a process quite different from the one that was used in the 70s. A different organism is charged with certifying the certification. There's both, as I mentioned before, there are 3 types of regulation: international, national, and European. You can see it on this slide. There's a general procedure for safety. Many of the safety requirements are already there in most vehicles. For instance, emergency braking. Well, this new regulation will make such features compulsory for all types of vehicles. From 2024 onwards, when we buy even the most basic car model, will have certain safety features that are not only present in better vehicles. One of the environmental requirements is the sound level. Traditionally, the sound level of vehicles was a problem. The regulation wanted to reduce the sound level. When we have new electrical vehicles, we have realized that now the sound level of the vehicles that used to be excessive at certain levels is an advantage for their safety. For instance, in urban areas where speed is quite low, and the noise that the car makes is too low. In the case of partially electric vehicles, the fact that there's no sound makes that those vulnerable users of the streets, not only those with visual disability, there's a new risk, meaning that if they cannot hear the vehicle coming, it can be dangerous for them to be run over the vehicle. They won't be able to realize that it's coming. The European regulation states minimum and maximum requirements for member states.
Imponer o no puede regular unos requisitos superiores. Y por el otro lado, España como Estado miembro ha cedido parte de su soberanía a la Unión Europea.
Spain, as a sovereign, as a member state, has to comply with the requirements agreed by with the other member states of the European Union.
Como decía antes, uno de los requisitos ha sido el nivel sonoro, que tradicionalmente ha sido
As I mentioned before,
encaminado a reducir el nivel sonoro de los vehículos.
the sound level was usually considered as something that needed to be limited. But because of this new threat of the noise being too low, now it was needed to introduce in the certification legislation new requirements for electrical vehicles to have an alarm system when they're at low speeds. So this acoustic warning will be able to alert users of the road or the street. As I said, at the latest, in July 1st, 2021, all of the manufacturers of electrical vehicles or hybrid vehicles will need to provide this acoustic warning signal. What are the features? Each and every one of this category of vehicles should provide this acoustic warning up to 20 kilometers per hour and during reverse. There are certain vehicles that need a combustion engine to function, since the combustion engine makes an easily identifiable sound by pedestrians and other users of the road. Then in that case, it's not needed to install this acoustic warning. The sound should be continuous. It must provide a similar sound to when cars speed or decrease their speed. They should be as easily identifiable as combustion engine vehicles are currently. And finally, so you can get an idea of the sound level, currently we're at 50 decibels and the acoustic warning system, and the maximum level for the sound of combustion engine is 72 decibels. So this is this acoustic warning is high enough, but is not bothersome. With this, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you so much. I know it's quite a complex topic and maybe difficult to understand for someone who is not working on a daily basis. Sometimes it's even complicated for us and the manufacturers that work together with us. But I hope with this brief presentation, you at least got a general understanding on how during the elaboration of the technical requirements of the vehicle, it needs to be taken into account the evolution of the features and how such technological jump ahead amounts to a need to change the legislation. Thank you, Victor. Quite often, such technical issues are difficult to understand. It's quite important when we design products and services. What is good for people with disabilities is good for everyone. It improves goods and services if we take into account the needs of people with certain disabilities. So thank you, Victor, for your presentation. I think we're doing great regarding timing, so thank you all. I would like to welcome José Luis. He's an architect by Politécnica University in Madrid. He has a wide experience on disability, over 20 years. He has worked in several stages within the ONCE, in all of its different scopes. He has worked as a consultant in different companies. He has worked in several projects. I won't have time to mention all of them. Smart human cities at national and international level. He's going to talk about safety in our cities, road safety in our cities. You have the floor. Thank you so much, Patricia, for the introduction. It's wonderful to listen to all of you, to hear a multinational company such as Alstom, as you mentioned before. Well, Álvaro said that you're learning so much from us. Well, I think it's the other way around. We're learning so much from you. The goal of the traffic directorate is, of course, to take care of people. It's great to listen, to hear how you're offering new and adaptive solutions for people. So we're getting there, is the feeling that I get from hearing all of you. I'm going to focus on what I wanted to tell you about. We're going to talk about a city that can be enjoyed by everyone, an accessible, safe city adapted to the times we're living in, to the new technologies, to new means of transport, etc. I think we need to think about the cities today and about the city of tomorrow. What's new today, tomorrow will be outdated. Before we start thinking about new cities, I would like to share with all of our audience 3 key ideas that we can consider. We have over 1,000 million people with acknowledged disabilities. That amounts to the whole population of China. In 2050, which is basically the day after tomorrow, almost 1/4 of the population will be over 65 years. In our country, this term will be even shorter. And by that very same year, 2050, about 70% of the world population will live in cities. We are seeing in Spain this problem of inhabited Spain, the migration of people from small towns into the cities, and we are going to see this even more often in the next few years. We need to consider cities that will offer solutions to all of these problems, as you do with lodging, urban planning, public buildings, transport and mobility, of course. That smart human city that Patricia mentioned in my introduction. This is a smart city that focuses on people. As Álvaro mentioned at the beginning, it's not the system, it's the traveler who determines the mode of transportation. The new methodologies regarding mobility needs to be done according to people's needs. How are cities planned nowadays? The cities where we all need to move around. Throughout all of the world, we have different types of cities, towns, because of their geography, because of their shape or their age, forces us to move, adapting to what's there. You can see these ramps, these protected floorings. We have cities. For instance, you can see the name of this city in Granada is called Get Out If You Can. Way signing for pedestrians sometimes doesn't make things easier. And for other types of vehicles, this image you can see on the screen can be the access to any large city in the world. There are thousands of different arrows, some going to the stadium, other one points to the IKEA, to McDonald's, to the city center. All of this has an impact on the citizens' mobility. Cities are the way they are. We need to find solutions for them to improve mobility for all citizens. In this example, you can see that within the infrastructure, this is a great crosswalk, an accessible street. You see that the management is important. How the inclusion of urban furniture, of the parking spaces, all of this also conditions the accessibility of many people when they need to move around the city. But this person that was trying to cross the street in a greatly designed city, now you can barely see them. That vulnerable pedestrian in the face of the vehicle that is coming ahead, we need to take that into account. There's sidewalks that are very well designed with bike lanes outside of the road. All of this needs to be upkeep as well. Here we can see terrible examples of elements that difficult pedestrians' accessibility. We can also see the difficulty from things that are placed on the sidewalks by the shops, by the cafes, urban furniture. All of this shows us terrible examples of how things can go wrong in mobility. I always like to show this image that is very recent. This is a park meter where you basically need to jump to access it. It makes no sense. There are many solutions to bridge this gap between the sidewalk and the park meter. Here we have other examples of excellent practices where pedestrians are protected and can enjoy the sidewalk safely, and also those with disabilities. This also, I really like to show this one. You see this bike lane? The central image, this is a sidewalk for pedestrians, but you can see in the bike lane, there are trees, there are street lamps. It looks like a obstacle race. Well, here we see on the right, all ways take to Rome. Well, here always take to Orense. How are we moving today and how will we move tomorrow? My colleagues were talking about how our city centers looking like. This is downtown Madrid. This is not sustainable, it's not healthy, it's not safe. I think I said once people with disabilities. I'm talking about everyone. We need to make a city that is livable for everyone and also accessible for people with disabilities, but accessible for everyone. We've had several revolutions regarding the Industrial Revolution, new vehicles, vehicles for everyone, and now we have shared vehicles, autonomous vehicles that are about to coexist with us. Also have new mobility vehicles such as scooters and electric bikes, and there's shared vehicles. The electric vehicles that were mentioned in the previous presentation with the warning system. We can see the scooters, how nicely parked they are on the sidewalk. Because what is more normal in our cities is to find this. And this has an impact on mobility because this prevents a pedestrian from using sidewalks safely. Thankfully, the situation is no longer something that could happen because they are not allowed to be on the sidewalk. Sidewalks are for pedestrians. It's the only safe space left to be protected from vehicles in the city. Well, but there are certain elements that are here to stay. We need to find solutions for them. We cannot kick them out of the cities. In the future, we'll have many other actors in city mobility, such as autonomous vehicles. Some of them are already functioning in different cities all over the world. We need to see how this interaction is going to work between pedestrian, autonomous vehicles. This interaction should be based on the fact that everyone can access information. We have drones. I think there are drone taxis already in Dubai, for instance.
And here, we have to always keep the needs of all travelers in mind. And just a few ideas here to when we talk about mobility and pedestrians is we're talking about everybody here. You know, regardless of all the public administrations, the cities, the governments, and so forth, to see how to modify mobility towards a more sustainable system. The key thing is that the best movement in the city is the one that doesn't happen. In other words, people should only travel in the cities when they really have to. See, city planners have to see mobility as an important element in the planning of cities. So mobility needs to be combined with new models, new lifestyles, and the design for everyone. All people have to use cities. All people have to be protected when using these new elements, these innovative solutions in cities. And so we need a good design, which is always accessible, and with the citizens in the center. So thanks very much. I went a little bit over time. I apologize, Patricia, but I'm very happy to answer any of your questions.
Gracias, José Luis.
Thank you, José Luis.
Qué didáctica tu presentación. Gracias, porque la verdad que
Thanks for that presentation. You gave us a lot of examples. And yes, you talked about disability, but we do need to build for everyone, as you said. I don't know if there are any questions from the public right now. If someone can to tell me if any questions have come in. Well, thanks very much, Patricia, but I'm afraid that there's no time for questions. Thanks so much for the speakers today and to all of the participants that have been with us today and throughout the Congress. Thank you so much to everyone. We hope that you have the same feeling as I do, that all of this knowledge has enriched us and has an impact on the way we will interact. But to close, I want to give the floor to José Luis Borau as the representative of accessibility and innovation and responsible for the organization of this whole event. José Luis, we'll see you again in 2023. Well, thanks very much, Sylvia. I'm just going to close this Congress. I could just say, I said that this is officially closed. That's what I said last time. But I want to thank, first of all of the collaborators that made this 4th edition of the Congress on Technology and Tourism for Diversity possible. Mention them, the Paralympic Committee, the Spanish Paralympic Committee, Terme, the Royal Patronato, the ONTE Social Group, all of the technological collaborators working, PlayStation, Casa Duomo, Smart City.es, for example, and of course the technical team. No one sees all of the people doing all of the technical work, image, people in Boadilla who are doing all of that work, working behind the cameras, the communications team of the ONTE Foundation that has been helping us to disseminate the social networks, all of the details that they have been working on. Special thanks to the Accessibility and Innovation team at the ONTE Foundation, and especially to all of the members. So thank you so much for all the work that you have been doing night and day. Always happy. Never complaining. I really think that I'd like to recognize Antonio Osoña. Congratulations on all this work that you've done over the past several months. And nothing else, really. Also, thanks to the public of the audience that has been listening and participating with us this whole week. So thank you very much for your participation. People from around the world supporting us and sharing their initiatives and good practices and visions on accessibility and innovation in tourism. And really nothing else. So on behalf of the ONCE Foundation, and I just heard this morning someone say on happiness at work, and I just really on behalf of the ONCE Foundation, I would like to wish you all the happiness in the world, and that we should try to make others happy, try to make the world a better place, a world that is more inclusive, that is of everyone, that belongs to everyone, and make others happy. And it'll make you much happier as well. So we are here to help everyone to achieve this goal. We'll see you back in 2023. Sylvia, thank you so much for hosting us this whole week. And we'll see you in the 5th edition of the Congress on Diversity in 2023. We hope that we can do this in person and have a beer after the presentations and give each other a hug. So take care and be happy. Thank you.